What's going on, everybody? It is that time again. The Sooners Illustrated Podcast, episode 82 on this Wednesday, May 8th, 2024. Josh Callaway, Collin Kennedy coming to you on a Wednesday. State tournament baseball this week in Oklahoma, so we moved the show up a day, kind of dancing all around for the last couple of weeks. Hopefully get back on a normal schedule next week. We do have just a few things we wanted to hit today. Another big commit. A guy we talked about for a long time, Trystan Haynes. We'll start the show there. The latest on Cobey Sellers. He's committing this weekend. Where do things stand in the recruitment for him? We'll also kind of wrap up the class as it stands today, and we'll look at what is going on with basketball a little bit on the back end as it's kind of sliding back to bad news territory for hoops as of late. We'll get there when we get there a little bit later. But let's start with some good news, Collin. Yesterday, Trystan Haynes commits to Oklahoma. A guy we've talked about for a while, obviously down the road in Midwest City at Carl Albert High School, which has been very good to OU these last couple of years. They're just loaded with OU players coming up this coming season. OU fans are just going to want to watch Carl Albert just because of how many future Sooners are on the team. But Collin, talk about the get. Obviously, this is one of the best players in Oklahoma. I think number 3 player in Oklahoma. He's a top, 150 player in the class overall. This is a really good prospect. I mean, it's always great to keep kids in state. But this is a guy who could have went borderline anywhere, and Oklahoma found a way to keep him home and bring him in. Big get here, obviously, for Oklahoma bringing in Trystan Haynes.
Yeah, 24/7 Sports has him as a top 120 player in the country at number 119 nationally. And when you have that caliber of recruit within state lines, you got to be able to keep him home, especially, and I talk about it all the time, but those premium positions, when you have an elite talent there just down the road from you, you cannot let that player go. And a little bit of a throwback. You remember Dax Hill back in the day, in-state defensive back? I remember talking to folks all around Norman, Oklahoma about the Dax Hill recruitment. He ends up going to Michigan. And that one was kind of, for me, a very eye-opening early moment in my career. Like, man, these elite players, they can leave, and they can go far distances for the right program.
Right.
And there were a few quote-unquote right programs for Trystan Haynes. You had Miami involved. You had Texas A&M involved. You had Notre Dame make a serious push here. The Fighting Irish were at one point behind the scenes considered a leader, and there was some smoke. Maybe Trystan Haynes was willing to explore options outside the state of Oklahoma. Nate Roberts obviously left the state, goes to Ohio State, commits to the Buckeyes out of this same cycle. And I think a lot of recruits across the country are starting to realize if you go somewhere else, in theory, you could always transfer back to the home state to maybe a program or two within those lines.
Sure.
But Trystan Haynes, as time went on, you had Notre Dame make a surge. I know Miami was very much a fan of Trystan. Swapped some texts with our guy, Gabby Arrudia, over at Inside the U, just kind of about Miami's interest in him. But as time went on, I think Trystan Haynes kind of realized the opportunity to stay home, represent the state that he takes a lot of pride in being from, lead that program into the SEC, get to play alongside his teammates and close friends. It's one thing to be teammates in the high school ranks, but Trystan and Marcus James, though, you linebacker commit, extremely close friends. They do a lot of stuff together outside of the sport, hang out, go to different places or events. And then obviously Trine Washington in there as well. Kevin Sperry was in the mix. And so a lot of group effort went into having Trystan Haynes realize, like, hey, man, if you want to play at OU, you want to play for the program in state, you really got to figure this thing out, because the guy that we're getting ready to talk about here in a second, Cobey Sellers, OU started a search for. Cornerback dominoes starting to fall with Cortland Guillory and Malik Hawkins. And so I think it was really that spring game weekend, Josh, that opened Tristan's eyes to what Oklahoma was at the time. If he wanted to be part of the Sooners class and be around so much familiarity and transition to the collegiate ranks comfortably, he had to make a decision and make it quickly. I don't think a lot of people expected this timeline to get this accelerated. In no world did I think that Trystan Haynes would be making a decision before someone like Cobey Sellers. But here we are, and he's now a member of OU's class. And I mean, this is the ideal fit. In-state, elite talent, but then what is he as a cornerback? 6'2" listed, which probably means he's more along the 6'1" territory, right? But still 6'1", even if he's 6'1.5", excellent height at the cornerback position prior to that SEC move. Him and Cortland Guillory, this is kind of a storyline for me now. Your top two cornerback takes in this cycle both have to add weight. I mean, you look at Trystan Haynes, he's another guy that really needs to get into the 180s and quickly. And for him and Guillory, adding muscle mass to the frame is going to be key, as they both are very physical, aggressive cornerbacks. But I think Trystan not only has the arm length and the aggression and the ability to play man coverage that maybe a boundary corner would need. But let's say in a world where Cortland Guillory, who has a lot of similar traits to Trystan Haynes, the arm length, the ability to use his hands, be an aggressive defensive back, let's say Cortland Guillory might be more of a fit as a boundary corner, considering some of his athletic context. Then you put Trystan Haynes either a boundary corner or the field corner, where, again, in theory, he would have to be covering a lot more field. Trystan Haynes is one of the faster players in this cycle. That's the thing that separates Trystan Haynes into being a top 120 recruit nationally. Excellent track speed, just overall a track and field star. But I love the thing the most about him is that you turn on the tape, you have the track times, the athletic context. Josh, you see the play speed right away. This guy moves and moves fast, and the ability to click and close or cover ground and chase down a ball carrier. I just think Trystan Haynes is a very complete cornerback prospect on paper. I think he has to develop as a true corner, but this guy has everything you're looking for from a baseline perspective and then some, which is why I think Trystan Haynes, especially being from down the road, is such a huge get for OU.
Yeah, he's an elite talent. I mean, you look at the programs we're chasing him, and we talk about Alabama in there and programs like that. And, we talked about this going back to when they got Xavier Robinson, a couple of years, I guess that was last summer. Carl Albert's not a bad high school to align yourself with and create a pipeline by any means. That's a program that's produced a lot of players at the next level in a lot of sports. So getting the ball rolling there and just locking down that program, it's gonna work out for you more times than not. And we were there, James and I, whenever Marcus James announced his commitment, and then Trinae Washington did the surprise commitment with him. I asked those guys then, like, complete the group here with Trystan Haynes, and they both were, said, yeah, we're working on him every day, pretty much, that we're going to talk to him and work on him every day to make this happen. And they do it. And like you said, Kevin Sperry was there. He's not anymore. We talked about that before. He transferred down to Denton Geyer. But between Sperry and Xavier Robinson, now the three guys who are still there at Carl Albert coming up this coming season, I mean, it's a pipeline. It's an absolute pipeline. And so, Mike Dunn, who's the head coach out there, obviously does a phenomenal job. Great guy. And that's just a program that is the elite of the elite in Oklahoma. It's really Carl Albert in 5A and Bixby in 6A are kind of like the two programs that are just a cut above everybody else. And so to create that pipeline is just it's a great thing. And they kept it going with Trystan Haynes. This was the one guy of the Carl Albert guys that didn't feel like an absolute given for a long time. And they made it happen. You talked about his track and field background. This is just a really good athlete, and got the height, everything. It's a guy you absolutely want, checks every box. And so great get for Oklahoma there, obviously. And Jay Valai stays on his heater. We talk about that. You mentioned bringing in Cortland Guillory and Malik Hawkins. He's on a hot stretch. Now, the heat check of all heat checks will come up on Saturday as we shift to Cobey Sellers. So Cobey Sellers, another guy we talked about, is another 4-star cornerback from Pearland, Texas. He's committing on Saturday. He's going to commit on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Final 3, OU, Texas A&M. Size things up for OU fans going into Saturday. Does OU have any shot here? Do you think he lands somewhere else? What's kind of your read on Cobey Sellers going into his commitment day, his decision day on Saturday?
Yeah, man, 2:00 Central Time on Saturday with us at 24/7 Sports. So be sure you tune in and support Cobey and check out where he's eventually going to land. But he said multiple times he's still keeping things open. He doesn't 100% know where he's going to go. He just wants to get a commitment done. And kind of like Trystan Haynes, I think this is the right move. A lot of these 2025s are going to start having their decisions come as spots are getting filled elsewhere. They want to make sure that they're landing with the program that they prefer. And so for Cobey Sellers, you mentioned it, OU is in there with Texas and Texas A&M. Texas kind of dropped out of the mix over the last couple of months. I had a crystal ball in for a couple of months in favor of Oklahoma. The Sooners were rightfully seen as the leader, and I mentioned this on the college football recruiting show, but I think there was a time or two where OU thought they just might be able to get this one done with Cobey. And Cobey's one of my favorites in 2025. Great guy, just an awesome dude to talk to, and incredible cornerback as well. He and Trystan Haynes are about as good as it gets when it comes to the cornerback position. And off the field, Cobey Sellers, very high character. And so he fits a lot of what Oklahoma and Brent Venables want in a cornerback recruit and overall representation of the program. But as dominoes fell with Malik Hawkins, with Cortland Guillory, with Trystan Haynes, I think Texas A&M capitalized on that momentum for OU behind the scenes and kind of started a surge with Cobey, making this a two-team battle. He had a couple of visits out to College Station in an unofficial capacity, and a couple of things here. So Cobey, yes, relationships are very big, but he's also very keen on what can I learn from you? What do you as a coach bring to me to the table that's going to elevate my game? Can I acquire knowledge about the sport of football that might help me greater into the future from you? And I think that's something that Texas A&M really worked. So if you don't know, obviously Mike Elko is the new head coach at Texas A&M. And Josh, that I got to give A&M their flowers under Mike Elko. This new staff is doing an outstanding job on the recruiting sphere. And I think part of that is what they've done with Cobey Sellers. So
yeah,
I know I'm probably going to butcher this name, and I apologize, but he's a very well-respected defensive back coach. Ishmael Aristide, one of the DB's coaches in this new staff at College Station. I know he had a very productive meeting with Cobey. They talked about the cornerback position. I know Cobey learned a lot from him. Was thoroughly impressed with that conversation. But then speaking of learning, one of the other defensive back coaches at Texas A&M, also one of the co-defensive coordinators, if I remember correctly, is Jordan Peterson. And Jordan Peterson was at Kansas, and I believe one of the first coaches to not only offer Cobey, but heavily recruit Cobey as an up-and-coming prospect. So there was a prior relationship there and trust, and I think also that known belief in you as a recruit goes a long way when we're talking about recruiting, right? Those first few coaches who believe in your abilities, you're going to lean their direction naturally, especially when they land in a place like Texas A&M. And so Jordan Peterson, now on staff at A&M, I mean, that's an incredibly valuable connection that the Aggies have in their favor.
Right.
And so, among other things, those two connections, what Texas A&M now looks like organizationally, they're much more buttoned up under Mike Elko, and then you go to the head man himself. Mike Elko has done, let me be frank, I think Mike Elko's done a lot of things in his short amount of time that Jimbo Fisher just really never did. And that's huge, right? Say, I know fans out there will say what they want, but as an objective observer of college football and trying to be a diligent reporter, you know, I know a lot of the stories about the Fisher tenure.
Yeah.
And what Mike Elko has come in and done has completely generated a 180. And so I think Elko is a very relational person. Jimbo Fisher at times simply was not with these recruits. And I know not just Cobey, but guys like Jonah Williams, Landon Rink, so on and so forth. Mike Elko has really garnered traction simply by being the head coach at Texas A&M who actually shows a vested interest in these prospects. And so all that to say, I think this is an OU Texas A&M battle down the stretch. I flip my crystal ball to the Aggies. I think that A&M, what they've done, the work that staff has put in with Cobey over the past couple of months, has really taken them a far way. And while Oklahoma still really wants Cobey, I mean, it would be ridiculous to turn someone like this away. And I'm sure the Sooners have talked at length with Cobey about what life would look like at OU. And Cobey knows Cortland Guillory and Trystan Haynes and these guys, by the way. So that's also a relationship there. I think Oklahoma still has at least a fighting chance, but going into a pending decision, I think Texas A&M is in the driver's seat, and we'll see who comes out on top. But clearly, I like where the Aggies are with an elite cornerback. Not too far down the road from them either. And so we'll see if the Aggies close or if OU can cover some ground.
So that's Saturday, 2 o'clock, like you said, on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel, OU, Texas A&M. Sounds like it's either Sooners or Aggies. Probably Aggies. Never know. Tune in Saturday afternoon on 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. See where Sellers ends up landing.
I want to say real quick on that note and why you should tune in. Nothing is ever certain, right?
Sure.
But man, one thing I really learned about Cobey in this recruiting process from the OU perspective and why Oklahoma fans should be looking forward to tuning in. Cobey is about as recruited a player as there is in the 2025 cycle for Oklahoma right now. I mean, when I tell you Cobey, his dad, and I had a really long sit-down conversation for like an hour and 45 minutes one weekend. And they talked about how it's not just Jay Valai. I mean, Brent Venables talks to Cobey, if not daily, every 2 days. They talked about how Todd Bates is constantly in contact almost daily with Cobey Sellers, sending them everything from scripture to read to various drills that OU is doing. Miguel Chavis is in talks with Cobey Sellers and his family. Brandon Hall is involved in this one. So there will be no lack of effort on OU's part going into decision day, what I want to mention, because this staff, almost the entirety of OU's coaching crew, has gone all in on Cobey Sellers, and I'm interested to see how it pays off. And one thing I want to mention, too, kind of the OU secret weapon in recruiting that we don't talk about a ton, but JP Lossman is outstanding at his job. And this is another recruit that JP's done really great work with in Cobey Sellers. So interested to see what the Sooners might be able to do over the next, 3-4 days.
Saturday afternoon, 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. And we'll see where Cobey lands and how that ends up going. So that in mind, they get Trystan Haynes. We'll wait and see on Cobey Sellers. But Trystan Haynes was the 15th guy of this 2025 class, which is coming together very nicely for Oklahoma right now. We've talked about the cornerback recruiting in and of itself, secondary as a whole, but it's been at a very high level. I was coming off Cortland Guillory. Now you get Trystan Haynes, Blake Hawkins before that. They're currently the number 4 class in the country, both in 24/7 Sports individual rankings as well as the composite, only behind Notre Dame, Ohio State, LSU. So right now it's a top 5 class. Now we're still 7+ months from signing day. But as of now, Oklahoma's putting together a really good crop here of 15 guys. We do this every once in a while. Kind of just a little state of the union for you on this 25 class. Obviously, you're never going to argue with being number 4 in the class. Again, it's still pretty early relatively. You know, we're still 7 months from signing day, like I said. But how's this class kind of shaping up for you with the commits, the adds of Guillory and Haynes kind of now in mind as they continue to build this thing up? And right now it's as good really as mostly any other class in the country as of now.
Yeah, so right now they climb into the top 4 with just the commitment from Trystan Haynes alone. Haynes himself pushes OU from 6th into the 4th position, and OU moves past a couple of familiar faces in USC and Clemson into that 4th position. Also worth noting, for a little bit of a checkpoint status, OU's still the number 2 recruiting class in the SEC, behind LSU, who you mentioned, is just above Oklahoma in the overall standings. OU's top 2 in the Southeastern Conference recruiting class rankings, top 4 overall, 18th in average per commit rating, and that's where you go from here. Top 4 class, but what's the ceiling? The average per commit rating could probably be bumped up. That would certainly be accomplished with maybe an addition like a Cobey Sellers, but look, the month of April was huge for OU, 7 total commitments with, I believe, 4 in the 2025 cycle alone. But now you have Trystan Haynes. You're staring down the barrel of a Cobey Sellers decision. Anthony Ogamoro is now coming up May 21st, and we'll talk about him a little bit more. That recruiting battle is getting very interesting. And May 21st being the decision date, could be able to add another. I think CJ Nixon is another one you eye as a potential accelerated timeline. I think that Oklahoma is in outstanding position with the in-state edge rusher who ranks top 50 for us at 24/7 Sports. That would be another huge boost for OU while currently sitting at top 4. You get a couple of these decisions to go your way here in the month of May before official visit season really gets underway in June and July. You just might be looking at a top 3 class overall going into June. I mean, that's huge. And we haven't even talked about the big fish that are still out there, obviously, in Jonah Williams, Michael Fasusi, Ty Haywood, so on and so forth. So part of this check-in is like, hey, Trystan Haynes was as big of a get as there is in 2025. And his literal boost 2 spots up for OU in the rankings reflects that. But now where Oklahoma is currently positioned before we get into the summer months of recruiting action, truly, I mean, almost mind-numbing, the position that Oklahoma is in before we get into some really dramatic recruiting months. And so I think you eye a couple of decisions here that could come in the month of May. They might be going in OU's favor. And then all of a sudden, man, like, we're talking about a class that has a legitimate chance when it's all said and done. And yet we're still a little bit early, folks. We're still kind of in the beginning stages of 2025, as crazy as that sounds. This is a legitimate class that has a ceiling of a top 5 finish. And if May continues to reflect the April recruiting momentum, Sooners are going to be really sitting pretty going into June.
And I can't help but think, too, and we talked about it last couple of years, it's kind of been just around high school football in Oklahoma. It's kind of just been kind of agreed upon or kind of talked about that the 2025 class in Oklahoma is loaded. It's very talented. And you combine that with the fact that this staff under Brent Venables, which we talked about many times, has put an emphasis on in-state recruiting and have done much better at it than the previous regime. That's kind of that produces where we're at. I mean, we just talked about an in-state guy in Trystan Haynes. You mentioned a couple other ones there in Ogamoro and CJ Nixon. I mean, the state of Oklahoma is a good high school football state, but in 2025, that class has got a lot of talented guys, and Oklahoma's doing a good job of keeping them around. And you combine that with what they're doing, obviously, down in Texas and elsewhere, and you get maybe a top 5 class again, which they did a couple of years ago in the Brent Venables, which is the first time it happened in a long time for Oklahoma. You're looking at maybe doing it again. Still some work to be done, obviously, but you're in position. So a lot to be excited about if you're an OU fan. And like you said, as we get into the summer months, which is, they have 15 commits already, but the summer months around June, July has seemingly been the last couple of years where they've really started to rack them up quickly, especially like July. So we'll see if it goes a similar path this time. And like I said, they already have 15 guys in, but we'll see. You would imagine that more momentum is going to continue to build up as we get into the summer. So.
And the thing I want to remind folks too on that very note, because it's a good point to make, like, if you're kind of wondering what's next, even though they have 15 guys, folks, Oklahoma's going big game hunting in official visit season. I mean, they're basically locking in on 7 scholarship spots, 8 scholarship spots, and saying, let's go get our guys. I mean, Jonah Williams, Ty Haywood, Michael Fasusi, the list goes on and on.
Right.
There are still elite prospects that have long been prioritized by Oklahoma, even outside of the familiar faces. I mean, Andrew Marsh is still out there, right? Yeah. What is Oklahoma going to do with the tight end position? which still has yet to really be ironed out. And they're in the hunt for a few other defensive linemen as well. Cole Breeler, Cade Peterzak. I mean, they have a lot still left in front of them at 15 commits currently, and that's kind of the craziest part. Where they are currently, Oklahoma now gets to go into the summer months not having to fill 15 spots, but rather saying, all right, we have a few left. Let's go get some of the biggest fish still left in the pond.
Yeah, right. It's going to be fun to keep up with. Obviously, you become a VIP subscriber. Collin is all over, along with our other great national guys. Like you said, Blair does a great job. Tom Loy's been a great guy for us. So join in. Become a VIP member, 24/7 Sports. You get access not just to our site, Sooners Illustrated, but the entire 24/7 Sports network. Getting into the recruiting, the real heavy part of it in the summer. So great time to jump aboard with us at Sooners Illustrated. I suppose we'll do a little bit of basketball to close. Last week we were doing the show, and literally as we were getting ready to record, we found out that Oklahoma was getting Duke Miles. So we pushed recording back about a half hour. So I got Duke Miles from High Point. We talked about it then that, there had been a little bit of momentum. Things had stabilized a little bit. Maybe things, contrary to reports, they were going to feel the team, kind of a thing. But, this last week has been a bit of a kind of a mixed bag. Kadari Richmond, we talked about, number one player in the portal. He visited Oklahoma, but they didn't get him. He goes to St. John's again. So St. John's beat OU head-to-head twice. They also did it for Aaron Scott, earlier in the cycle. They didn't get Jordan Ivy Curry. He put out his top three. OU wasn't in it. You did get good news, I suppose, I guess, with the fact that Jalen Moore didn't get an NBA draft combine invite, which would certainly suggest to me that he'll be back. And that was the expectation already. But I have a hard time imagining he'll get drafted or feel good about his standing without a combine invite. Because that was what we talked about, was he is a freak athletically. He might go into the combine and wow some people. Well, he doesn't get an invite. Hard to do that. So I would think Jalen Moore will be back. If he is back, that leaves two open spots. You still haven't added a big at all, which we talked about. State of the union for you on hoops. It's been, like we talked about a bunch of times, the offseason has not been great. There's been some more good news lately, but, for just like a day there, it felt like when Kadari Richmond was visiting, like, are they about to pull off the number one player in the portal? And, like, suddenly things look a lot different. It didn't happen. Like I said, they didn't get Jordan Ivy Curry either. Where are you kind of at right now, hoops-wise? They still have a couple open spots to play with. They need to add probably a big and maybe another guard. We'll see where they go from here.
Yeah, I think the Kadari Richmond thing, to me, you kind of have to kind of come back to reality a little bit.
Sure,
right?
I mean, it was a big swing, yeah.
If you take your shot 100%, and again, I said it on the show last week, like, man, props to the OU staff for getting him on campus.
Right, yeah, for sure.
St. John's, from what we had been told, had lined up a pretty substantial NIL package for not just Kadari Richmond, but if you haven't been keeping up with the college basketball transfer portal, I'm not going to dive into all the specifics, but basically St. John's is absolutely rolling right now. I mean, they're kind of getting their pick of the litter, and Kadari Richmond was one of their primary targets. And so,
yeah,
out of one of his recent visits to St. John's, kind of the firm belief was like, he's going there. And then all of a sudden he shows up at Oklahoma. And yeah, it was really cool, right, to follow for a second. But then you kind of have to, like I mentioned, get back down to earth and be like, well, if St. John's has already lined all this stuff up for this guy and he has a chance to go play with a couple other elite players in the transfer portal, Aaron Scott, if you'll remember, being one of them that Oklahoma targeted. Right. He landed at St. John's. Kadari Richmond going there, Oklahoma missing out on him. I don't see that as like a huge loss or even really a tale of the times, just because it's the number one player in the portal, man. Just get him to visit was ridiculous. But as far as everything else, man, I find myself doing this a lot, taking those dramatic pauses when we're talking about OU basketball.
It's been a hard month and a half.
So you mentioned Jalen Moore. Obviously, he doesn't get the invite to the NBA Draft Combine. To me, whenever that gets done, and like you mentioned, you got to think he's coming back, but as we established last week, the deadline is May 29th, so there's still a long ways to go.
Yeah.
They got to zero in on a big and a guard, because if you're calling more your forward and you're obviously assuming he's occupying a place on the roster, you want to fill up the backcourt and the front court. And the big side of this equation, I feel, has been really interesting because you had Brandon Garrison there on the board. We're almost going to get something done. He goes to Kentucky.
Yeah.
Christian Reeves drops his top 4, former 3-star recruit, 7'1" center who went to Duke, played, I believe, a season there for the elite program that is the Blue Devils. Now back in the portal, he just dropped the top 4, Josh, of Oklahoma, Clemson, Vanderbilt, and Florida. But at least from what I've been able to track down, I don't think Reeves has a visit on the books to OU anytime soon. I believe he's visiting, though, some of the other members of that group throughout this week. Not a whole lot definitive there, just because I've been tracking a lot of other stuff down. But if Christian Reeves is really on the board for OU, you really got to go after a guy like that. 7'1", experienced the collegiate realm, would be huge to try and swing. So I assume OU's going to try and get him on campus if he hasn't yet done already, which I don't think has been the case. And then you go to the backcourt, and it's like, okay, Kadari Richmond was obviously the number 1 player in the portal, but he was a point guard. Do you want a point guard, like a true point man, or is it just kind of like open board here? I don't know. The roster management side of this equation now for me is also kind of a great enigma. And you would probably know more than me, if I'm being honest, but like what strictly Oklahoma needs to round out its backcourt. Let's say if they get a big and they get Jalen Moore to come back, that's going to be a whole other storyline to follow over the next few weeks as well. And so we'll see how they try and navigate this thing, but still kind of a tale of the unknowns when it comes to OU basketball.
Yeah, I would say so. I'm looking at it just like, what's the starting 5? I don't know what the starting lineup is at all. I mean, Sam Godwin will start. If Jalen Moore comes back, he'll start. But after that, I don't know what this team is. And a part of it is not knowing what guys on the roster are, like Jacob Cole. I have no idea what that guy is, as far as what he was out of high school as a prospect, but we didn't see him literally at all. He redshirted the year. We never saw him once. So where does he factor in? Could these freshmen be an immediate impact? I've had the pleasure of seeing Dayton Forsythe play in person multiple times. Really talented kid. He's another guard. Could he? I don't know. I mean, Porter Moser hasn't seemed especially inclined to play freshmen in his time at OU. Obviously, we talked about Caden Cooper and Jacob Cole at length last year. He did eventually put Lo Suzan Ortega-O in the lineup as freshman, but that team was also below 500. I mean, they really just needed to do anything to try and turn it around. So I don't know. Like you said, unknown is a fair way to put it. They've had some nice pieces, but it just seems like all the big swings, and it's going to be hard to land a big swing when you're at OU. You're trying to go against guys who have options that are like Brandon Garrison from Kentucky, or like Richmond did with St. John's. I mean, St. John's is a basketball school. They play at MSG. Rick Pitino is their coach. That's going to be hard to beat for OU. So I mean, they're chasing players that have these options other places. They're chasing the right guys, but it's hard. It's hard to win those battles. So it's kind of like, I don't know. They're in a tricky spot.
Man, Overton went to Texas Tech too, right? And then Padula goes to Ole Miss when they're investing a
little more. Yeah.
And Duke Miles, who popped just before the show last week, Oklahoma beats out Auburn, and it's a major win. But that also kind of feels like the exception to every rule, right? I mean, what's the saying? For every rule, there is an exception. For every 10 times, there may just be that 9th or whatever. And I don't know, man. It just getting Duke Miles away from Bruce Pearl and Auburn was a massive win for this program. I kind of feel like that's the other guy that probably cracks the starting 5 for you going into next season. Maybe I'm off on that, but that's the thing is even like one of the bigger wins for OU this portal cycle still feels like an unknown commodity.
Yeah.
And yet I felt pretty comfortable saying like Padula lands at OU, Overton lands at OU, or Garrison, or even an Aaron Scott. I was like, that's a starting 5 caliber player. I don't know what other kind of like Duke Miles battle there is to win.
Yeah.
Maybe it's Christian Reeves. Maybe it's like a point guard that I have yet to really track down. But I don't know, man. It's very tricky right now.
I don't know. Like you said, I don't know. It's been a weird. It hasn't been pretty much since Selection Sunday. It's kind of just been survival for that program, and they've done some nice things. They've had some nice pieces, but. Like I said, just the body blow after body blow of like these big names that it looks like they maybe have a shot, then they end up not getting them. It's tough. So we'll see. They got a couple more open spots to play with. We're still waiting on Jalen Moore's decision officially, one way or another. Does seem like he'll be back, but with the way this offseason is gone, you don't count your chickens before they hatch at all in that regard. So we'll still wait and see on that. And we'll see how they felt those last 2 spots and try to piece this thing together going into the SEC next year. I think that's it for now. Like we said, state tournament baseball, so we're going to move the show up. We'll be back, I think, on a normal schedule next week, hopefully. Tom Green has been on vacation. We'll rejoin James and I on Monday. We'll hit some other stuff, football stuff, and the weekends for the Diamond Sports. Big 12 tournament for softball this week. James is going to be out there at that. Baseball's got their final home weekend against Baylor. Could win the Big 12 if everything goes, certain results fall. They could win the Big 12 as soon as this weekend, so I'll be sure to wrap all that up on the Monday show. We'll have Collin back here next Thursday to hit some other recruiting news and things like that. CK, appreciate you, sir. Get some rest if you can. It's been a busy go. Get some rest if it's available to you, and we'll reconvene next week.
Looking forward to it. Everyone stay safe out there. I will see you all next week, and feel free to hop aboard Sooners Illustrated.
Go crack you another zero sugar coconut DP. And relax.
You know what, man? The hate from you is unwarranted because I can't talk to someone who I roomed with in college, and I watched single-handedly fueled by Mountain Dew and Slim Chickens, and yet I'm getting hate for drinking zero sugar Dr. Pepper. I just,
I mean, it's the combination of the zero sugar and the coconut. That just seems
okay. First of all, if you've never had a dirty soda and you're not cultured, I can't help you. But also, folks, if you're out there like me and you have to be a normal human being, you don't have the metabolism of a Greek god like Josh Callaway does. Guys, we roomed together in a rental house in Norman for about a year. I never saw him eat a fruit or vegetable, period. Like, you never left for class one morning and was like, I'll have an apple. And so...
No. Definitely not.
You can go try the Dr. Pepper Creamy Coconut Zero Sugar for yourself and realize, like, hey, the normal world is fun. But
I have a water right now, but when the show ends, I'll be cracking a Mountain Dew of some variety. I have about 4 or 5 different flavors in my fridge as we speak, so that'll be getting cracked. But it was just the zero sugar and the coconut. That's what I couldn't get back because the zero sugar and just I'm out on that. I need full sugar. I need extra sugar if I can. The coconut, if you like coconut, that's cool. I'm not a big coconut guy. I don't hate it, but the zero sugar and it was too much. I don't know where you even find that. That's like an albatross soda to find that combination. So respect that.
Our listeners and viewers out there can make the opinion for themselves. Go find Dr. Pepper, zero sugar creamy coconut, and realize health-based soda might actually help. Or you can be like Josh and down 12 Mountain Dews in 12 hours, and you see if you don't gain a single pound. I mean, let's just find out, because that's what this guy does. That's what I know.
It is what it is. All right, I think that's it. We'll get out of here. We'll be back next week. James, Tom, and I on Monday, and Collin and I back here on Thursday. Have a good weekend, everybody. We'll be back with you next week. For Collin Kennedy, I'm Josh Callaway. We'll see you guys next time right back here on the Sooners Illustrated podcast.